right, a good day to all. Happy Friday to you. Bitcoin Friday, as we have been prone to do of late, doing Bitcoin on Fridays. So we're midday here on February 9th, and I've got Bitcoin here. This is Bitcoin to the dollar, the 4-hour on Bitstamp. And right now we're trying to get a handle on whether or not we have a good solid low. So as you can see here, what I have up, I just have the fib pull here from the high to what the proposed A wave here. So from the A, here's our B. We got through the golden zone. We know from an Elliott perspective that a B wave can easily go into that zone. It's really anywhere from the 50 to the 786, much like a second wave. Right? It's a push to get to the highs that fails, and then we fall over here. Now, the reason I think that's still the count, because I think that's where algos are working. So clearly, we've got pretty good evidence here. So from that swing here, so here's their first target. You can see the reaction. Here's their second target. Again, you see the reaction. So if we make that assumption, then it becomes a question of can we make a case for this being a good hard low and the correction being over? Well, I don't know that we're there yet, because what really needs to happen is that low needs to get tested. So at some point, we need a retracement to come down here and test at least to 50%. We're looking for some sort of retracement. And we don't know, if we've got a top coming in here. What we can say with certainty is that we've got some pretty substantial pivots here that are going to offer some resistance. So even if I just take that high to our proposed low down here, well, we know coming into the next 50 here, that's going to be major resistance. Here's the 618. So the algorithms will be written to sell this, and they'll defend it all the way up to the 65. If they flip, then of course that's when they'll take the next 50 coming down. So if we're going to get out of the hole here and we're going to start moving impulsively, we can identify where we're going to hit the most likely resistance. And we can see just structurally. So if we were to wick this off here, just looking here. So coming into the 50, just prior support likely to give us some resistance right there. But we need to get through this before we can be absolutely sure that we've got a hard low. We've got to get through the 65, and that's up at 13,000. All right, so we got a lot of work to do to get there. Again, so is it going to go straight? Well, probably not. So likely we're going to move with some degree of subdivision here, if you will, so that we can get a reasonable count on it. So this has been somewhat questionable because the structure here, it's easy to look at this and say, well, it appears that it needs one more leg down. And the reason for that is because if there's the bearish count would imply that we have a 1-2. And then from there, we'd have a 1-2, and potentially this is the 3, and we've got to come down one more. So so I'm going to use my arrow here. So if this is the 1-2 and this is the 3 with nice 5-wave subdivision, then we're coming up potentially for the 4 to come down one more time. And in this case, again, it would be a test of that low. Now, do we break it? Do we get through? That remains to be seen. But it would appear that we're starting to build a case that we have a good low here. Can't be definitive about it. There's just sadly, I wish we could be. I'm as bullish as anyone, and I'd love to see this, just start ripping up here and get back above 14, call it 14, right? That would be a clear break here of this resistance. Don't forget now, we got to go all the way up to the top as well. So that 50 is going to be major resistance as well. That's 12.8. So 65 for that is, just there it is, 15, just on the other side of 15. So we've got a lot of work to do. So if I pull that off, we can see what we're likely going to run into. Now, interestingly, here now, you can see from swing high to low, this prior support here I was just talking about, that proposed A wave low, there's the 38. So, that very well could provide some resistance, but the algorithms are going to start selling it here. If we get up there, that's the first place that they sell, and they'll defend it all the way up to the 65 or into the golden zone. If they get on the other side of it, then we flip, as I just said. So we shall see. First glance here, that doesn't really look like the prettiest impulsive wave that we've ever seen. Now, granted, I'm on a 4-hour, and I'm in log scale. So, it kind of, at first glance, you look at it and you think, looks like we may well need that last push down. so I would stand by the thought that there needs to be a test of the low. It doesn't have to go all the way down to the low, but at some point we need a pivot here to roll us over and then test the low. So even then, just for the sake of the hypothetical, if we're putting in some sort of a top here, we got to come down and at least test the 50 and the 618 here. So if we start to get that action over the weekend, we'd want to get down into the subdivision there on a lower time frame and see if there's a case to be made for a buy there. I mean, you certainly have the potential for that to be there's a 1-2 in here. We'll go look at it on the shorter time frames, see if we can make that case. But that potential is certainly there. Then if we get this kind of action, we come into that high probability zone for a second, and we get a bounce out of that. Well, that starts to build our case for this going up to challenge some of these levels, and then we start projecting up. So you can see here's the negative 100, right? As I often will show you, that'll be very close to the 1618, 175. So if we can get a 1-2 up for the 3, again, you don't know until you get a 4, and then we get through that, and then we get that last leg. Then we'll know. Until then, we're making educated, speculative moves, right? We'll call them that, right? Not a guess. It's more than a guess. We're looking at the probabilities, understanding that we have the potential here for this to play as a 2. 618 would be even better because it's more of a test of this low. But if we just get into that box, I'll be looking for entry there myself. If we can get a push out of that, good sign. So we shall see. Now let's go down to a smaller time frame and see if we can make sense of it down there. So going off of the 4 hour, so I'm going to go, where have I got it? Let's go down here. I think I've got it over here. I'm going to all the way down to the 15 minute. Now this was a chart I was going back and forth with some members this morning. There's really a couple of different ways that you could count this. This is the count I'm working on currently. So this is the 15 minute on Bitfinex. Now note I'm changing exchanges. So this is where it gets tricky. Now, as I will often tell people, the smaller the time frame, the more difficult this is, because you get so many moves that can validate, invalidate. You end up with multiple ways to count something. So I will continue to stand by my position that you want to go to these smaller time frames last, not first, and that's a mistake, or a tendency. I won't call it a mistake, but a tendency I see, particularly for new traders. They want to go down to the smaller time frame, thinking, "Oh, well, the risk is lower here." Certainly I understand that argument. But it's just there's so much more noise here. Now, particularly in crypto, where not every coin has the volume here to really give us good, clean Elliott counts. You want to be careful about going down, certainly below the 15 minute. I go to the 15 only for precision entry. But on Bitcoin, we can make an exception because we do have the volume. So it was when I came in this morning, I was looking at it. This is the count I have here. It's working off of this is the low. So this was the negative 618. That's that low that we're looking at. So of course, first thing we're going to do is we're going to check that first retracement. That's the place to start. Do we have a 1-2? Well, if I look here, we go a little deep. We get through the 665, but we know, just like a B wave, the 2 can be anywhere from the 50 to the 786. That's still, statistically where we might anticipate the second, right? It's a push to get to new lows. It holds. It's a test of that low. So we move beyond it, and you can see, so here's the negative 100, which I will just show you, will be very close to the 1618. So if I draw that 1, and I project from my 2 low here, well, you can see it right here. So it's very tempting to look at that and say, okay, well, that's the high probability zone for a third. So the first thought was, we had to go all the way down to a 5 minute to get this as a third, because that's what your eye wants to see is 1, 2, 3. Here's my ABC. We go up for the 5. That would make sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we get this extra little kicker. So, looking at it now, there's a couple of different ways you could count this. So we could have an A, B, C. So we could have a flat correction, and there's some symmetry here that's interesting. So if we pull from this swing high here to this low, and then we work from this high here, you can see it's almost to the tick, right? So it's just a slight front run on the 100. So very common if this were an A, B, C, for that C wave to bottom right at the 100%. So nice symmetry there. So that's a contender. That would still, we have a couple of problems here. So look how we got the negative 618 there just perfectly from this pull. Interesting. So we got the negative 100 here. somewhat coincidental, but here's the first algo target, ticks it. Here we go to the negative 1618. Here's the negative 618, then back to the negative 618. So, again, it's just, even though this wouldn't be something we would trade off of, it's interesting to see how the market is responding to these fib levels with just remarkable precision. So if I pull that off now, since we've identified this, that's a count that it's valid. It doesn't invalidate anything, but I'm leaning more towards this count here. And the challenge with it of either count, if this were our fifth here, and we had an ABC, right? That's a reasonable count. Well, this would be the A wave, the B wave, the C wave. Well, look, if we come in with that and we're at 3, 4, 5, well, then we've got a very shallow second, because if this is the one, if this were our one, right over here, and this was an ABC, well, we've got this very shallow second wave. Now, statistically, it happens. It's low percentage. 10% are that shallow, but it's still 10%. So I think what I think now is, having really looked at it both ways, I think this plays a little bit better. We as we know in a diagonal, very often, I'm going to take this off as well, very often the A wave, or pardon me, the one wave, in this case it's a leading diagonal, the one wave will be the longest wave. So all we have to really do is make sure that the third wave is not the shortest wave. Again, in a diagonal, or in any case, the third does not need to be the longest, just can't be the shortest. Well, we can measure that. We can look at this, and we can clearly identify that. Come here. That the third is longer than the. If I can get this hot, the third is longer than the fifth. So we have this here, right? So if get that low right on. Okay. So you can see here would be 100% of it. So the third is longer than the fifth. So we have a reasonable count. So it plays. We've got all the subdivision that we like. So we get 3, 4, up we go for the 5. We get an ABC down. Now what's the challenge or the question mark in your mind? It remains the same. It's similar. It's the shallowness of the second wave. So if that's our one wave all the way here, well, this is shallow. Again, at this point now moving into this action, whether this is the top of the one or this is the top of the one doesn't matter as much. It's just kind of interesting to look at those two paths, both which are viable. They don't validate any Elliott rule set. I'm leaning here, despite the shallowness of this move here, because of the better structure and because this is a diagonal. So I think this plays as a 1-2. Right? I could be proven wrong, within the hour. But right now, this looks like we've done the same thing again. So if I'm coming off of this as the 1-2, on the assumption that I'm allowing for the shallow second, well, then I've gone. So let me blow this up so we can see a little bit better. So I've gone into an impulsive move here. So I have potential here for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into a 1, but I have that same problem. Now, it may just be implying market strength. So if I work from my low here, if I'm working off of that as my 1, yet again, very shallow into the second. I don't love it, but it certainly plays because I've got the nice subdivision. 3, 4, up I go for the 5. So I get a 1-2, again, shallow 2. I don't love that, but it plays because from here, now I'm moving into a 1, 2, 3. So if I've got 1, 2, and I can bring this down here. So I'm looking for a third here relative. So if I put the wave on that so you can see it a little bit better. That's the idea. Yeah, I know that's shallow. Yeah, I don't love that. But could just be the market is strong. So there's an impatience, not willing to wait for it. Again, we're down on the 15-minute, and this is kind of a good example of why the 15-minute is the last place to go, not the first. But if we're trying to get a hand on this, and I have a number of members now that are really focused on day trading, where the 15-minute is your bread and butter, that's the time frame you want to work with. So I can look at this and go, okay, well, does that play as a 1-2 coming out of this 1-2? Well, I go right to the golden zone, so it's technical. So I get a technical pivot. So if this plays as 1-2, well, then I get my next 1-2. Well, now we've gone up here. We haven't quite made the negative 100. So we're trying to get a 3, 4, 5 up here. So potentially we're working on the fourth here to get that 5. So relative to this 1-2, we know that negative 100 is going to be very close to the 1618. So if I put that on it, then we'd be working as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would look something like this. So we'd have down for the 4, and then we'd look for that 5th to come up here to give us that 3rd relative to this 1, 2. All right, so that's a potential roadmap that lays out. It continues to support the idea that where we started all the way back to that low, if I can pull it out here, that this is a low that we can work from. So, again, it's your call. There's nothing wrong with being on the sidelines here. So, but stability in Bitcoin is allowing for opportunity in alts. So, if we're going to continue to move at this slow but steady pace higher, alts are going to be an interesting place to look to park some money. So we shall see how that unfolds. But given what's happening in the stock market, it's kind of interesting to see that Bitcoin maintains its strength. There was a thought that with the sell-off in the market, there was just a broad-based risk-off mentality across all asset classes, and that's not what we're seeing here with Bitcoin, which I think is encouraging. So it's not the prettiest count ever. It's at least question marks in your mind. Do you want to put money at risk based on the shallow 2 and the questionable 2 here? That's individual choice. I think there's nothing wrong with waiting for more clarity. So it's just a question of where do you want to hold your value? Do you want to keep it in Bitcoin? Do you want to move it into alts? Question mark. You got to make that decision yourself. But I think we're starting to build the bullish case here, recognizing that there still is the potential at some point here we're going to have to come down and challenge this low. So if we do, eventually we're going to complete this 5-weight structure. We're going to just draw from low to high, and then we're going to look for the 50. So is it up here? Here's the next algo target. Is it up here? Well, then we'd be looking down here. That's 7,700. So we could still see weakness in Bitcoin, right, and still maintain this bullish path. Where's the top? Well, we wait for it. We wait for it. If you want to play it safe, you wait for this to top and look for the second. Right? Again, this is 15 minutes, so even on the 15-minute, you get here's your pocket. That's between, call it 7,700 and 7,300. If you want to be more conservative and you're just looking for the bullish side. There it is. Okay, guys, I've run long here, but being Friday, I thought we'd give that a closer look. So that's what I see right now. I'll wrap it there.